Getting lost in your eyes over here.
That's what it is. Because you're looking into my deep holes.
I know.
There's nothing in there.
Oh my God.
You should be scared. I'm scared.
I feel a chill. No, it's eyes are cool.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm scared to get LASIK, because I'm scared that like my eyes already suck. But what if I'm one of the people who gets it fucked up or bad, you know,
right.
and then it's worse. Oh man, my vision.
I totally get that.
I'm scared of that. I'm scared to make a real, like, I'm scared to like in hindsight be like, you just didn't want to wear glasses, huh? Like,
yeah.
You know?
Like how much of a
pain is it to wear glasses in contacts is the real question.
I guess, yeah. Like how much is it where it's like you're at the point where you're just like, it's worth the risk.
Right.
Like,
I don't
you know.
I'm kind of at the right age though. So it's like,
yeah.
Do I roll the dice? I would really love to hear from our listeners about this, actually.
Yeah. I mean, if you have the means, and
I do,
you know,
I have the insurance. I could do it now. This is probably,
that's honestly pretty cool.
I feel like I should do it.
No pressure. No pressure.
I'm scared.
Put out a Twitter poll.
Yeah, I'm scared.
Hey, Victoria.
Hey, Chelsea.
You know what I could use right now?
I have no idea. What could you use right now?
A Breath of Fresh movie.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Cool.
We'll do that.
That's a movie I like to see.
This is a Breath of Fresh movie. A podcast where me, Victoria Harley,
and me, Chelsea Pope,
we watch a movie neither one of us has ever seen, and then we talk about it.
That's it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Today's episode is the 2020 thriller Promising Young Woman, which I abbreviated as PYW, and I panicked for a moment.
PYW?
PYW, Promising Young Woman.
Why'd you panic?
Because for a second I was like, what does that stand for? Today's movie.
Pretty young
woman.
Pretty young wing.
Yeah.
Pretty young
It was
wing.
like a PYT moment.
Yeah.
Literally what I was thinking about. This film was written and directed and produced by Emerald Fennell, who I just want to throw out, if you're a fan of The Crown, she's playing Camilla Parker Bowles.
Really?
That's her.
I gotta start watching this Crown show.
Whatever.
You love that show.
I do.
It's great.
So just to get the log line out, because I wrote it down.
Good.
Promising Young Woman is about a young woman who's sorry, I shouldn't be chuckling through this. A young woman traumatized by a tragic event in her past navigates balancing forgiveness and vengeance. Mm-hmm. That was kind of the best description. I found a lot of like racier descriptions.
Sure.
And I was like, I don't like that. I liked
that this is a very like sheer one. It's not you're not getting like a lot of details. You're not getting a lot of it's not giving away too much.
So I have to know your first impressions. Like, what did you think of this?
Great.
Yeah.
So good.
What did you love about it? I have to know.
I mean, there really was a lot to love. Yeah. I mean,
I also loved it.
Spoiler, you know, I could. I tell you.
You could hear it in my voice.
Well, yeah, no, I knew you were like excited to chat about it.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but just because I think it's a very divisive movie. It's very like polarizing.
I saw.
So we can talk about that later. But I was like, well, maybe she won't be into it. But I didn't think you wouldn't. I mean, after I watched, I was like, holy shit. Anyway,
I could. It had everything I liked, and in the way that like. It's all the stuff that like we were praising like Zola for, you know, a few episodes back, which is it's stylistic, but it's dealing with layers of intensity, and it's like sour bubble gum. I mean, that's like a super abstract way of putting it, but basically it was extremely, every shot was just beautiful. It was extremely cinematic, extremely colorful. And it was also, colors are great.
So fucking
It's
great.
also, it manages to be devastating and still actually funny.
I know.
I
know. There were so many moments that were very funny.
I mean, we're like, I want to say right away, spoilers, from this point on.
Yeah.
And now you know that we loved it.
Yeah. Now, like, if you haven't seen it I think kind of similar to other films, I would say, Like, I would encourage you to not spoil this for yourself.
Yeah, this is definitely another good example of the less you know, the better, because there were a few things that were spoiled for me going into this, and
that's a shame. I'm
deliberately ignoring that fact in my assessment of it now, because it's so not on the movie that I had to kind of see a lot of like Twitter discourse that already took place about this in advance, and that it was divisive, and what does it accomplish? Like, does it accomplish what it sets out to do? Is this just a man hating spree? Is this just?
I did feel really things were a little icy in the apartment after watching it. Like, I mean, I watched it by myself.
Sure.
Because this movie is about the nice guys.
This is about
this is about the guys who think they're nice guys.
Yeah.
And it infected me with a paranoia and a certainty about the nature of men.
Yeah.
That like was very it stayed with me.
Yes.
And I don't want to necessarily believe that, because I know some genuinely good fellas. Like, I do.
Yeah.
But this movie, like, I recognize so much of myself in it.
Yes.
And this is like, thank God women are finally getting these opportunities, because I was electrified by like just how much of a woman's point of view this was. And I don't want to belabor that, because, it's a film and she's a director, but like, we don't see this shit represented. If you like Taxi Driver and you don't like this movie, go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to say it any better than that. I will say this is the perfect example of a movie that examines, you want to call something a gray area. What does that even mean at that point to you? Yeah. That there's gray areas. This is obviously a woman who's dealing in certain ways in absolutes, but I think that for what she's doing, which is, we're spoiling an aspect of this that, like, again, the less you know, the better. So
they're gone if they listen.
There you go. But yeah, so
if you didn't listen, it's your fault.
So she's going out to these bars, pretending she's too drunk, and then these men, they don't take her home. They take her to their homes usually, as opposed to insisting on getting her to her home. And
always
then,
under the guise that they're going to get her home.
These are the guys that are going to get her home, but then they take her to their place, and then she sobers up and like catches them in it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, what she reveals is that the entire time she's been sober.
Yeah.
And that this was a ruse.
She's been sober. It's an act, and she's basically just trying to, this is like a scaring people straight kind of thing.
Yeah, and her sobriety in that moment, it's like, well, just a moment ago you wanted this. What's different now?
Yeah.
And forcing them to reflect on themselves and their own actions.
Yes.
And what I love is that this film cast actors who often play good guys in other movies and TV shows. Like Adam Brody is the first, who's like in the OC and like the nice guy.
Right.
And it's sickening. Like the first scene was apparently how Fennell sold this film. Like she described this whole opening sequence, and it's such a relief, because I was watching it and I didn't know a lot about this movie. I knew vaguely what it was about, though. And I was like, oh no, is this how this is starting? I'm like, oh, like I'm feeling sick and I'm seeing it, that creeping feeling. And then it stops. And it's like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what I mean. Like, women have had to watch male directors have our tits off, and they, like drown us naked. Like, they've done so many things to our bodies. And like the fact that people got so incensed that this get flipped around.
Yeah.
And it's like, fuck all of you people. Like,
totally.
I felt so angry, like in a good way.
Yeah.
Like watching this movie and after this movie, like it really, she's a Travis Bickle. She's a Joker. She is like a character who's flawed. Like, she's not, but I think she's also like this person who, the main character Cassie is just like really interesting. And I can't decide has she had a psychic break at some point? Like, is she sociopathic?
I think that she's definitely damaged, and what she's doing is obviously unhinged. And I think it's extremely badass. I also love that this movie's not afraid to explore like that. Even what she's doing has consequences.
Yeah.
She's going to she takes it too far.
Yeah.
She fucks up.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't, she has her whole contingency plan in place and all that shit, which is like, that is satisfying. And I was appreciative of that at the end, but like,
I needed that.
Yeah. At the same time, I also think this is a movie that, a lot of people might be like, oh, this is just like, hating on men or whatever. And it's like, no, I think the movie does do cool. I mean, every single fucking character tells her that she's not well. Like the good people in her life too are trying to help her. She is not healthy. No, she is on a downward spiral, and it reaches. It's almost watching an addict spiral.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is, and that's why I'm likening it to A Taxi Driver. This isn't a story that's about catharsis or release. It is about increasing anxiety, increasing tension.
Right.
This is watching someone spiral out. This is watching someone destroy themselves.
Yeah.
I had just watched this Agnes Varda film called Vagabond, which is about a woman drifter in France. And this isn't spoiling it because this is literally the first scene is she's found in the very beginning, frozen, dead in a ditch. And the rest of the film is basically begins at the beginning and kind of shows her journey toward that. And I had a lot of that in my head as we were as I was doing research for this and watching this, and it just, these like notions of freedom. I don't know. The woman was constantly avoiding life by doing it. Like she would never work anywhere. She would never stay anywhere very long. And people always get frustrated with her about it and tell her so. They're like, you're not, and they said, by rejecting the system, you're proving it right. You haven't won. Yeah. And I think there's like elements of that in this. Like, and on another note, completely different note, what a fucking cast.
Yeah.
Like, I think everyone who read this script was like, I have to get in this. I have to be in this. Like, just a quick list. Apart from Carey Mulligan, who does a lot of period pieces. So this is like not rare, but she doesn't do a lot of contemporary modern stuff. Anyway, Laverne Cox, Jennifer Coolidge, Bo Burnham, Molly Shannon, Alison Brie, Alfred Molina. I think there's a few others I'm forgetting. Damn. Like there's a lot of comedy people too. Like Sam Richardson's in it.
There's a lot of charisma in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just at every new scene it was like, oh, she's Connie Britton. Yeah. Oh my God, that scene.
You know what's great about comedic actors too, especially the ones that are just like as obviously talented and as seasoned as a number of them are, is that they're so good at being in the present. And a scene like there you see that these are not performances where they're getting all caught up in themselves. Sometimes I feel like you watch dramatic performances and they're like almost too directed, and I feel like I can't speak on behalf of how they were directed in this film other than obviously great in my opinion. I really enjoyed it, but every performance feels really natural because they're reacting off of each other.
Incredibly grounded.
An understanding of improv is shared amongst the cast. But that is true though. I think you really feel that in a movie like this where the dialogue that I was just criticizing last night in Soho for having on the nose dialogue lines that are very like, oh, the city's crazy. The city's going to break you or whatever, like shit like that, versus stuff that's like the lines between her and her parents are all extremely on the nose, but it's all well performed. And the suitcase scene could have felt worse, but it was like great.
It was played really even.
It was played so well.
It was played like, you're right, with like a tremendous amount of realism.
With the Laverne Cox too in the cafe. All of that could have been treated as like bullshit.
Everything was so grounded and felt real and honest. And I grew up in Ohio, so the fact that this film was set in Ohio was just like, okay, cool. Like, even though awful things are happening. Awful things happen in Ohio.
Well, clearly this movie proves there's awful things are happening in Ohio, you guys.
But like there is something about like Midwestern guys being kind of sweet. Or that's often, like I think I saw either I think it was a Reductress headline that was like, is he in love with me or is he just from the Midwest? Yeah. Because there's like this politeness, there's friendliness. And I think what I liked about this movie was questioning those people who think they're the good guys who maybe aren't as good as they think. I got really hung up on that.
I think really that's part of what made this so divisive. Like we were talking about, I think there were a number of those kinds of guys maybe watching this movie who maybe were like, not me.
They're like, what the hell? This film also brings women into the conversation about how women are complicit in this stuff.
Absolutely.
It's not as if women are exempt from the criticisms this film is levying.
I feel like it's pretty balanced.
Oh, it's so balanced. I mean, if anything, some of those scenes with the women are more upsetting, more striking because it's a greater betrayal. You know?
So she takes it pretty far with both of the women that Connie Britton and Alison Brie both are. They really They pay the Pied Piper. She's playing the Pied Piper.
Yeah, no, it's those scenes are great, but like the tension and I want to talk about, did you have like a favorite character? I mean, and I don't mean like a character you liked. I just mean,
my favorite character was Al.
Right.
Oh, I loved Al.
Right. You know, there's characters that not necessarily they're not likable. Well, who's the best character? You want to talk
about Bo Burnham? That's fine.
I don't at all, actually. Okay. I'm not part of the stands.
Sure.
I don't need to talk about Bo, but he did disappoint me.
I knew
that was going to happen, though, right?
That he was, he was designed to be this likable character to emotionally pull you in.
Yeah, no,
and
it was, and I think because of the very first scene, I think you're meant to be suspicious at all times,
right?
And then there's that moment where, I mean, first of all, okay, he went to school with her, so right away we're like, like the past, and then. You know, he's still in the med school community. And then he does that thing where they go out for a walk or a date.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, this is crazy coincidence. Like, this is my apartment.
Right.
And he misled her. And even though it was a tiny, tiny bit, she is so like...
She's so done with him in that moment.
Oh my God. And the way she like kicks the trash can because she's like frustrated at herself for going that far, letting herself trust that far.
Yeah. But by the same token, though, like, I think and I get why she's upset because she's that character, but also, too, like, don't feel so bad, girl. Like, you literally spit in his coffee and he still asked you out again and he drank it in front of you.
Which was pretty hot. But I do think it's like there's a scene. Okay, so this woman, you know, she's obsessed. Her friend, I don't know if we ever actually spelled this out, her friend was raped and eventually dropped out and then eventually killed herself.
Yeah.
Cassie is this sort of mixture of survivor's guilt but vengeance on behalf of it. You know, I mean, it's whatever you want to throw at it. But even the victim's mother even tells Cassie, you've got to let this go.
Which is played by like the nicest comedy lady in the world. And so obviously it's even more endearing.
It really is. And I think that is such an important fence to establish because it shows us that like, no, this is a woman who, yes, this is addiction. This is like somebody who is on a destructive path and it's not going to end well.
Right.
You know,
this is like one thing that I was a little surprised I didn't see more of like Nina's family or whatever. And then there's another part of me that's like appreciative of how succinct this film overall was, even though it is a full 2 hours. We don't like I was talking about the on the nose stuff. I wouldn't say it's on this movie's dialogue is on the nose. It's just a succinct movie. Like it's brass tacks, like Molly Shannon's character being like, you have to let go. Like she's just, it's very, all the dialogue is really direct. Even like the kind of the sarcastic banter with her Bo is like named Ryan in the movie, whatever. He's like, even that's helping us sort of like, I feel like that is a really creative way for us to streamline and succinctly get on board with this quandary of her revenge path. They could have dragged this out into multiple scenes of courtship, into something. It could have been something really trite. It could have been a number of things. I mean, there was, and there was back and forth. Like she rejects him a few times, and then he fucks up and whatever, you know. But like, it still moves quickly.
It does, and there's something that happens in the movie shifts for a moment away from thriller.
Yeah.
And it doesn't become a rom-com, but there's this sequence of like happy music and the two of them really enjoying each other and falling in love. And I couldn't articulate this as myself. I have a review that I want to get at a little bit later, but they pointed out that this film is challenging genre conventions because it's funny, it's painful, it has romance, it has all these elements, and it's really like questioning that. And that upsets people. Genre is it's like this contract. That's how they described it. There's a genre contract, not just between the audience and the filmmaker, but like the studio and the distributor and the advertisers, so that you know what they're selling, you know what you're getting. This movie confused some people.
Right.
And usually, instead of being mad at the conventions of genre or questioning the construct, people just question the movie. And so I think this movie was a victim of a lot of that. Like, I think it really because it is moving in and out between these different kind of things. It's not, a traditional rape revenge movie usually involves a horrific rape at the beginning, and then usually a father or a brother or some man in that woman's life going on a killing spree to go get the vengeance.
Right.
So there's a lot of things happening there that just don't happen in real life. One, being believed.
Yeah.
Let's just start there.
Sure.
Also, that justice will be done. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen.
Right.
That someone will take on your case with, no, this is a film that like refuses to play that game. It's like, it's so much more real. And it's like a woman advocating for another woman. And it is destructive. She's not a character we should emulate, but I rooted for her.
Yeah, exactly. She's not someone that I think maybe some of the criticisms I saw were that this character was being falsely idolized or whatever, which I don't think is the case. I think it's fun to cheekily stan her or whatever, but I think that anyone who watches this movie from start to finish is also like, not anybody, there's crazy people, but like I think a sane person watching this like can take away that this movie is simultaneously granting her sympathy and telling you not to do what she does either. It's also trying to tell you we need to look at the system of behaviors. Yeah, totally, that push this one person to go to the lengths that they did. And of course, I was also rooting for her. I like the way it ties itself up at the end. I think it made all the right choices to say exactly what it needed to.
The original ending concluded with the fire. And that was it. Yeah. And it was one of the notes that kind of was given, like, doesn't have to be a happy ending, but we need something, know. And this character is so meticulous and plans. Kind of feels like it would be in character for her to do this.
I know it made sense, and it was why I appreciated it. It was not out of the realm of the character to have pre-planned the messages.
I think that's why it worked,
pre-planned the arrest. There were a couple bits that seemed like flights of fancy, but I think her again being as meticulous as she is, and it is very well set up, and so it's not unearned what they do. Yeah, it is just. I can also totally see how this movie would have ended at the fire, which would have ultimately, I think, even driven further the point that no, we are not meant to idolize this character. Exactly. Yeah. We are meant to condemn the sequences of events that led her to this fate. Yes. We are not, No, it's okay that we rooted for her.
I mean,
we can be sad for her death.
I mean, I thought it was going to end at the fire. Like when we got, to be honest.
Well, the music they played too, that King and I song and all that, it have like that cinematic end. Type ending.
It also was like maybe this is naive. I was in such shock. I wanted her to be playing possum so bad. Right. Like I did not
Especially since she had been kind of half doing that the whole movie. Every time she was sedated.
Exactly. And I was like, please. And then it just... No, she's dead. Yeah. She's dead. Mm-hmm. And then like a bad 90s... black comedy with the dead stripper. Yeah. They got to get rid of the guy just immediately is like, this is not your fault. And watching the way the men come together to like, she doesn't matter is so chilling and upsetting and like harrowing. And her dying has to happen because like, it can't be a happy ending. Like, But I was hurt. I was really like, I was so upset.
Yeah, you want her to find happiness.
And the way she died. Yeah. Like the way he just pinned his knee down on her and the way he's screaming at her. And it's so, they don't cut away. Yeah. And I'm glad they don't, but it's just, you piece of shit. Yeah. You small little man. Like, you fucking asshole. And I know, she had him strapped down and she was about to, carve the name Nina into his belly with a scalpel. And I don't quite know, like, could she get away with that? Like, was that the full end game? Obviously, she thought she might die because she left that contingency plan. But I don't think it was a suicide mission.
I'm a little torn on that. I think there's a part of her that wanted to die at that point. I think, I'm not saying she literally
not that way,
went in with the intention of death. But I do think that like she, at least subconsciously, she obviously took all of those extra steps. Like I think she kind of
knew what the risks were.
I mean, she at least for narrative purposes needed to die, which is, I'm sorry to say, the
that
reality,
sounds terrible, but
it's true. And I think like symbolically, her death at the hands of the guy who like is the cause of death for Nina in this fucked up way, it kind of brings those two together again spiritually. Like like that's such a fucked up thing to say, but it's true.
She
the parallelism.
She kind of threw herself at like a dark fate. You know what I mean? Like
almost like she needed to fully experience what Nina herself experienced in a way. Like she herself, I don't think she deliberately was asking to be suffocated. I'm not saying she literally asked for this, but obviously narratively it was going to happen. Like there's this meta like vibe that I certainly like am picking up cues on at that point. I'm like the big magnanimous moment at the end of like it reminded me of like in Drive when the driver resolves he's going to kill everybody and you're like, oh, he's probably not going to make it. It's the same thing in Taxi Drivers. This is the big sort of momentous thing. And at the same time, it's like we're sort of frustrated out of it. If she had really wanted to make sure she was gonna like you know, I don't know. I think, you know, it's the addict problem where they partially, I think they're invincible at that point because she had gotten away with so much fucking shit up to that point. Yeah, you know, the sort of blatant like disregard for her own safety,
she
like
was
already
throughout the film. I mean, every time she went and posed as drunk, she was putting herself in a tremendous amount of danger. Yeah, you know? So and that's kind of
the other shoe was going to drop in some way at some point. You know, like I got nervous at like the crowbar thing, although it was also a really satisfying scene just because it's like you're getting confrontational. You don't know if that guy's gonna pull a gun out on you, you know, and granted the guy was just like, you're crazy, and drove away, but I can think realistically speaking, if I ever tried pulling that shit, I wouldn't doubt that someone would try to come out and throw hands anyway
and come at you.
A woman with a crowbar is not enough for a big guy in a truck.
I know I agree. There were moments like that were definitely. You're right. It's this addict thing. It's
you don't
like
know what else there's. Well, you don't know if they've got a crowbar in their car. Then what?
I think it's like, again, it's like that kind of weird. Freedom's not the right word, maybe, but there's this kind of liberation that comes with like, I no longer care about my life or where it might go. You know,
and that's like, honestly the real like the underlying story that I appreciated the most is seeing this girl who's so lost in this like
She's mourning. She's mourning.
Yeah, she's so it's an addiction. She has this whole book that she's tracking all of these men with, and then, you know, it's just the consequences of addiction is what I see. The loss of selfhood, where you do get in these careless situations. Not careless, like again, she planned everything, but she also could have gotten tighter handcuffs. She could have gotten his legs. She didn't, you know, there were certain aspects that I'm thinking too, you know, in my mind, like logistically, and this is sounding a lot like the Titanic, like the headboard thing where it's like, oh, what if they both had gotten on the headboard? It was big enough. It's like, well, what if she had like gotten tighter handcuffs, or what if, you know, what if she had just like given him like a little more, like what if she had just roofied him a little bit more? What if she had just like done something, you know, or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like she set it up in a way where she knew that she was, I mean, she was so like, the moment she's walking into this fucking house of dudes that are like, I want a piece after you. Like a fucking, that's oh no, I felt a little bit game over at that point. I was like, she's not going to come out.
You're in a house full of men.
She's not going to come out in one piece at the end of this. I don't know how, or I don't know how the fuck she's going to try.
But you know what, that ratio goes on though, right? Like, I mean, women who really are, you know, dancers, exotic dancers, like have to like, I mean, I thought it was representing something that like, you know, there are people who do this work who probably end up in situations that look a lot like this.
Sure. Yeah. And you don't know.
Yeah. And I was afraid for her, but I was also like, but I was thinking about all the women who don't come in with a plan like that. Or I'm sure you do come in with a plan. I mean, you have to. Like, but you know what I'm saying? Like it, and she dispatches the whole crew so easily, you know, with the vodka thing and the drugging them. It's just like so disappointing. I agree. Like, it's like, oh, why didn't she do this? Like, you could pick it apart. I don't want to pick it.
One, narratively,
and I don't want to pick things apart because, again, so much of this film was like, I recognize this point of view.
Yeah.
And I don't see this represented nearly enough. Like, it really, like, like, men, you need to see it. Like, you need to fucking see it. And, like, you need to feel a little bit like, oh, you know?
Yeah.
But it's not just a polemic. It's not just like some feminist attack against men. I mean, again, like it's pretty even-handed. And the scenes where she's questioning women in power, you know, in positions of authority or who took different actions, like those are pretty withering. And then I have to bring up though, what did you think of the scene with Alfred Molina? Like, she forgives him.
That's why I was gonna back to the character question you originally asked. I was gonna say him. Okay. He was my favorite character.
Awesome.
And that was my favorite scene.
I'm kind of with you, actually.
Yeah, it had. I think that's where it added a layer of depth in this film that just was already like it just added some more. It rounded her out. It created more humility. It just between that and like obviously the Molly Shannon scene was important too because like she's literally talking. Nina's mom's literally telling her let it go. But like I was happy to see that there was some level of like emotional. I don't know. I don't have enough words.
I understand what you're saying, though.
You get what I'm saying?
I mean, I'm with you in that scene that, I mean, first of all, like, there's so many beautiful shots.
There's a cathartic moment for both of them.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And it was a shared moment of, like, tenderness. I think that was rare.
It was true human connection.
Yeah.
They saw each other's souls.
And they both were deeply damaged from this experience. Yeah, and I think for her to see that and to see that kind of reflected back at her and for him to see that too, like it was a really great scene. It was the best scene. I think. And
it's so funny how like in all the lists of like cast and all the reviews I read, like his name never comes up.
Yeah.
There were so many beautifully composed shots in this movie. And that scene was particularly good. His whole apartment, it was like, did you notice the plants were all dead? And it was like,
oh, he was in a tomb, you know?
He was living in a tomb. And the way he also like accepted her, like he was waiting for it.
Yeah, there was that moment too where it's like death came for me kind of vibe. There was that symbolism that I also was kind of like, maybe he this is going to be like that V for Vendetta scene when the doctor gets killed in bed and she's like, will it be painful? And he's like, no, I did it 5 minutes ago. And she's like, thank you. Like, what if I said I was sorry? This Alfred Molina scene where he's like, you know, I had an epiphany. They told me I was having a breakdown. I'm just like, oh, this reminds me so much of that scene where there's this satisfying sort of like recognition.
Yeah. And this being such a like simply written, grounded scenes. The way he just says, I can't sleep. He doesn't say it like that. He says it in this way that makes you think about what that really means. Yeah. And you realize this guy is broken. I agree with you. It expanded her character as well to see that she was capable of forgiveness, that like what she needs from people is a consciousness that is shifted. Yeah. Like that is what she needs from you. Yeah. I mean, that's why like when she goes home with all these guys, I mean, that's really what she's seeking.
And that's also too how the scene going, you know, at the lodge, at the climax of the film, going back to your point of like, she just needs that recognition. Is like, she just needed, the guy just couldn't even say what he did. Yes. And it escalated to the point where she was and I also wonder too that maybe had he been more, I don't know, because he is the key perpetrator. He's the Bowser of the castle, so to speak, you know, of this whole thing. And it's kind of, I don't know if a confession would have been enough in that moment. I don't think an Alfred Molina type confession would have been enough, but
no, it wouldn't.
But I wondered if that was going to happen and I think at any point.
And I think that is like what is most upsetting to me about the scene of the guy coming in to like, this isn't your fault.
You know, it's fucked up, but it's like, it's fucked up, but I kind of laughed in that scene,
right,
but like not in a way where I was like laughing at haha she's dead, but like the way that he was like whimpering there, and the other guy was like, it's not your fault,
right, and like he becomes this little baby.
I was just like, I laughed at that because that's so fucked up.
It was like you just murdered someone and you're the victim.
Wow,
like what the fuck? fuck.
Yeah.
And that's like exactly what I mean when I say like we need to see
that whole bros
this.
before hoes.
Yeah, like this is like again why she has to die narratively, and like we keep adding narratively.
Yeah, narratively.
That's why she has to die
because we didn't want her
narratively.
to die.
No, but
We didn't wish for her
But
death.
that's just it. It's like it's like this frustration you feel that like they just will not acknowledge it.
Yeah.
There's just no acknowledgement, and that is like. It's that like there's no release of tension.
Yeah.
There's no catharsis.
Yeah.
You are just furious. And I think the end is somewhat of an attempt to give you that little bit of uplift.
I think it was necessary. I think I would have been really fucking depressed if it had ended on fire. Even though it would have worked, I would have been really depressed.
If it had ended, I would have kind of, in a twisted way, loved it if it had ended that way.
Just that way.
That would be so... This is the most pretentious thing, but like it would be so European.
So like, European. Yeah, it's very like, funny games.
Well, I've watched
Irreversible.
I have watched so much depressing cinema where like it's like stories like this. This is a beautiful take on a sad story. I mean, it has. I mean, come on, that use of the strings orchestration of Toxic.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So good.
I mean, this is a cinematic joy. And it's like, and it delivers this very like depressing message, but it still manages to put it in this package that is very palatable. And I mean, I was very caught up in the story. I was very tense the whole time. You know, that expression, edge of my seat. Like, I was not leaning back. Like, I'm leaning forward. I'm like elbows on knees.
Yeah,
I'm
like
in this.
Yeah,
like,
that was satisfying to be that engaged in a movie.
That's what I mean. And that's it.
Especially because, I had some stuff spoiled for me going into this, and I still got
just sucked in.
Yeah, I got very into what was happening. Every scene is very engaging.
It got me. And again, just beautifully shot, wonderful palette, great music. All the performances are great. Everything's grounded and simple and right. It's so good. It's so fucking good. And I can see how men would have a hard time with it, but I'm also like, you should.
Yeah.
You need to have a hard time.
Yeah, they should.
Like that's where I'm at. This one really got me like going.
Yeah.
Just a few notes about the production. Margot Robbie was one of the producers for this. So is it Robbie or Robbie?
I think it's Robbie.
Robbie. Okay.
But that's a good question. That's a fair question to ask.
Yeah. So this shoot was done in 23 days, which is
that's fucking fast.
Pretty fast. But
like I said, it's a succinct movie.
Very succinct. And also the director was pregnant at the time. And
wild.
I heard her interviewed and she said, I had my legs crossed the entire time because I just needed to get through this shoot. I should have done more research about her, but as I mentioned, she was an actress. She was also a showrunner for a season of Killing Eve.
Oh,
so people
right. I remember hearing about that.
Yeah. So she's
very cool.
This is an incredibly well-rounded woman, actress, writer, director. She's really just, and this is her debut. Mm-hmm. And so I texted this to you earlier, but I was like, I'm probably not a good person to pick this apart critically because it's so hard to want to pick something apart that just like I felt so recognized in and by. Like this is what people are talking about when they talk about representation, like to feel alive and knowing that like, oh, this person gets my point. It's being seen.
Yeah.
My point of view, our point of view is being finally seen, distributed, and you can have trouble with it. That's fine. Like, let's fucking talk about it. Like having a conversation about this movie is not its purpose, but like, I mean, this was shown. There was an initiative to have this shown on college campuses because we need to discuss consent and we need to talk about this. And, I grew up in a time when it was, I mean, not that it was so long ago, but even just, 10, 15 years ago, the idea of like, oh, do whatever you want to her. She's drunk.
Well, I mean, these characters are our age, which is to say, and that's playing all the music that we listened to in college and in high school and whatever. So it's like, I
think that is a lot of maybe what I'm identifying with is that like this is being created by and starring people who are approximately in this age group, and it's addressing. So I mean, it is something generational, sure, but I would love for older couples to go see this and like talk to them on the sidewalk after. Like, how'd you two get together?
Right.
Like, fuck. Like,
hence the divisiveness. There's generational, gender.
We don't like to see ourselves. Mm-hmm. I loved it. There is something about the ending that still sort of puts the hero is the cops coming in at the end.
Right.
Maybe a little, they are systemically, they're part of the problem. But I feel like at that point, the movie, as much as you want to you can call it feminist. I'm going to resist that temptation. I think this is just a thriller. And it felt like Hitchcockian in a way, not so much because she's not typical Hitchcock in that she's a normal person who becomes embroiled in something, but in a long form way, that is kind of what goes on.
Right.
This wasn't what she intended. And the fact that it's so much of a thriller and like every moment it's like, what's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen next. I really didn't know. And I was really held in it. And it was macabre, and it had, violence. It had, it felt, I don't know. It felt, I'm going to go ahead and say this felt like a modern Hitchcock. So that's pretty high praise. Maybe I'm way off and I'll regret that statement, but who's listening? I don't know. I guess I don't have as much. One mention here from the Washington Post. Fennell's movie does more than just update old formulas. It shows how those formulas inhibit viewers from grasping psychological and moral complexity. Couldn't have said that better.
Yeah, same.
And I think that complexity is, again, what people are maybe struggling with.
Right.
And we don't, grays, tones of gray. There's no real good and evil here. There's no real black and white here. And there's even characters within the story who question that. And, Ryan, he wants to be a good guy. You can see this struggle. But then when he fails to tell the truth to the police, it's like, right, he's not going to blow up his life for this. Like everyone's decisions and choices are kind of motivated by something that feels kind of realistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck Al.
Fuck Al.
The guy from Glow.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that he's so cute.
Yeah.
I think that guy's really good looking.
That's the point.
I know, right? I like also that we never saw, there's no rape scene.
No, I really like
Not
that
one.
too.
Not one.
No, I think
Thank
it's
God.
great. Yeah.
Thank God. Yeah. Would you watch this movie again?
I don't know if I would put it on just for kicks, but if it was on, I would definitely like start watching it just because it is like it's an anxiety inducing thing like to watch. There's tension building.
I would rewatch it if I was gonna like sit down with someone who'd never seen it. I would definitely watch it a second time and be like, you gotta see this shit.
I mean, it was a whole lot of fun, but is a spoonful of sugar with some very heavy medicine. That's a breath of fresh movie for you.
It really is. We like a sad ending.
Yeah,
it's good for us. Thank you to all our listeners.
Yeah. Thanks for listening in, and you can follow us on social media, like all the medias at Fresh Movie Pod. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.
That'd be cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah. Oh, you can email us at abreathofreshmovie@gmail.com.
Don't forget the A in the front.
There's an A in there.
Breath of Fresh Movie.
A breath. We're done.
Dope.
All right.